Welcome back to part 2 of our WSOP Main Event review. I'm continuing my analysis with Espen Jorstad, picking up where we left off at the final table, using real-time insights from GTO Wizard. All right, Espen, I remember this hand. It's a fun one. We've got a chip leading, 60 big blind deep, Dobrich. Opening from early position, Suki calls in the big blind. What do we know about Dobrich as a player? How's he been approaching this final table?
I would say that these two players were approaching it in the polar opposites way. Basically, Suki was being very careful. Dobrich was taking a lot of spots, or taking every spot, playing very aggressively, pushing people off pots, playing massive pots, bluffing a lot. So two polar opposites, these two players, I would say. And yeah, this is an interesting hand for sure.
Yeah, I mean, so far nothing too unusual. He's opened the queen jack offsuit from early position. Two high cards, pretty typical open for a chip leader, even though it's U7 or U8. But after a C bet and a call on the flop, he's just all in on the turn for 1.2 SPR. Do we think this is standard? And can Suki actually consider folding this hand?
I wouldn't say it's standard, no. I wouldn't be surprised if the solver likes it, but I would not say it's standard. Suki ends up folding, which, yeah, I don't know. Seems I would probably just call, especially versus Dobrich. I think also it's a spot where it's very easy to overbluff. I think it's very intuitive if you have like queen jack or a flush draw to just do this, apply maximum pressure and try to take it down. While if you have a hand like ace king or aces, then maybe you just go for three streets. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, it definitely felt, from my point of view, that this is just the play you make when you're trying to bluff and you're trying to put max pressure on someone who you think will fold. And I mean, that's a huge fold. At least it seems like a huge fold from my point of view. But let's have a closer look to see how close this is to equilibrium. All right, looking at the solution, first thing I found interesting was deciding if Suki's hand was good enough to get it in on the flop. I mean, it's tempting. You've got top pair, very good kicker. You're up against a chip leader who presumably has a wide range. But the solution here is showing that king jack is just flat and king queen is maybe good enough to raise. Would you ever play this a different way on the flop?
Not be surprised if the solver would like to just fast play king jack as well. But yeah, you're right. It's just calling. So maybe Suki is onto something here. When I saw the footage, I was like, king jack here seems like kind of an intuitive just raise, get it in, or just all in. Uh, he's the shortest stack. He's only got 15 big blinds. Um, yeah, I don't know, but yeah, he got it right. So well played.
Yeah, I mean, maybe there's some interpretation to be had around, how loose was Dobrich opening exactly, how much c betting was he doing exactly. You could probably build a range that's wider than this and claim that that's reality, but as is, against that range, it's just a call. Um, and the
I
next,
would like to I would like to assume that Dobrich just range bets the flop, to be honest.
yeah,
I would be surprised if this does not end up being a range bet for him. So I guess we could venture into the node locking territory as well, see how this looks versus just a pure range B36.
yeah. I mean, let's start there. It's a very easy switch. We can just remove checking. We can remove larger bets, and now everything is going to bet two big blinds. Let's see how much that changes. King Jack, yeah. So, I mean, good intuitive adjustment there. We've got more marginal hands in the betting range. We're now happy to raise King Jack. Maybe it is as simple as that. I mean, if we think he's range betting flop, maybe this hand is just, it's close in EV regardless. Like this is pretty much dead even. But would this be enough to push you into just wanting to fast play?
I mean, intuitively, I felt like fast playing, and it's kind of good to see that if we assume that he's range betting, which I definitely assume, then it is actually just fair to either go all in or, I mean, the EVs here as well are super close. You can basically choose your own adventure and take it from there. So we can see what happens when he calls here. Does Dobrich just jam turn sometimes, and if so, how? How do we proceed?
Yeah. Yeah, so my assumption and what the original sim before we made that edit was showing was that mostly Dobrich wants to bet half stack on the turn, and that seems to still be the case here. He wants to leave money behind, and, my understanding of plays like this is the player who's covered is under immense risk premium, and by going all in, if you have, king jack as Dobrich, you wanna bet and actually get called by something worse than king jack, right? You wanna get value with those hands. That's how we make money in theory. There's obviously ways to make money with bluffs, and I was alluding to that with the queen jack, but, my understanding here is that we leave money back to encourage Suki to actually make lighter calls, and that gets us paid when we have, ace king, king queen, king jack.
Yeah, I would assume that he's making a lot of 10x indifferent on the turn already with B67 here. I would imagine like 10-9, Jack 10, all of these hands probably not in a very happy place. Yeah. Actually,
Yes.
Queen 10 is going for a very aggressive option. Ace 10 out, sometimes 10-9 pure out, 10-8 pure out.
Yeah.
Um,
But pretty
Kind of
I mean,
interesting Queen 10 off.
however we spin this one, if you're right about that flop range bet, it certainly looks like we just can't fold a king in theory. Uh, we're seemingly pretty happy to either call or put the rest in. It's winning a good bit more than folding with these hands. But yeah, you're right to think that queen 10, ace 10, maybe like the tens. Looks like only the tens with a flush draw have a choice.
The
The
Queen 10
weaker tens
offsuit.
are just out there.
Offsuit.
Oh yeah.
What is Queen 10 offsuit doing? I mean, is it just because king queen off is just like a big part of his value range? I don't really get this. I feel like even queen 10 offsuit is not that attractive here, given like we're blocking his bluffs. Like a lot of his bluffs are going to be like queen jack or queen nine suited, maybe.
Mhm.
Having a queen doesn't seem that attractive to me. I mean, to me, ace 10 seems more attractive than queen 10. Do you want to try to make sense of this? What do you think is going on here?
Um, I mean, it it's the only way to make sense of it, I suppose, is to look at the response, and there are not many, other than noting that there's some flush draws that just bet and shrug and call it off. There are some tens with a flush draw that we're beating that bet and call it off. It's
Yeah,
potentially just
but
like
look,
the magic combo that tells us that when you have the queen, they're way more likely to have the flush draw, and you just have just enough equity to put it in, but, this isn't the kind of stuff I would ever try to figure out in game personally.
And now I see what's going on. Because I was like, but why do we not want to have the ace? Like, why would we want to have the queen? But actually, if you look at it, a lot of his bluffs are ace X here. A
Mm,
lot of his bluffs are going to be the suited ace X and a bunch of offsuit stuff as well. A lot of combos of ace 9 off, ace 8 off, and ace 7 off. That's what's driving it, right?
yeah.
Because if you're blocking his bluffs, that's not a good thing. I was thinking that the queen was blocking a lot of bluffs, but the ace is actually the one who's blocking a lot of bluffs here.
Yeah.
That's interesting, yeah.
Yeah, that actually, that's a good catch, and that makes perfect sense for why the solution looks this way. That's although on the other hand, what's so dangerous about making, blocker assumptions like that, because we saw Dobrich move all in with the queen jack. Obviously, if he was playing this strategy, queen jack would be a lot of his bluffing range. Maybe ace queen even goes in. But the solver decides these are not the hands we want to bluff. We want to bluff with lower equity. We want to bluff with ace nine, ace eight, ace seven, and be able to fold to a jam. So definitely an
Yeah.
interesting output, but of course we can see a very or rather inaccurate representation of what Dobrich was doing in game.
Yeah, it's kinda meaningless to look at, like, what happens versus the all-in as well, because that all-in range is gonna be theoretical, while Dobrich all-in range, it might be theoretical, but I kinda feel like it's gonna be very bluff heavy.
Yeah,
Yeah, who
I
knows?
agree. All right, looks like we've got a simple preflop one here. Espen folds all the way to Dobrich in the small blind, 13 effective. We've got queen six off. We open jam. Duick's got ace nine. I mean, the ace nine we must be pretty happy to call with, but are there any other considerations for you as Dobrich?
I would do the same. I'm very happy just open shoving queen six off here. Look at the chip stack. Like he has 60 bigs. Duek has 13 and a half. I mean, you can just be a big savage here. I think it's one of those spots where your range gets split into two actions, and that's all in or non all in race, you know? You probably don't play many folds or limps, if any, I would say. You're probably just
Yeah.
gonna race or jam here. With this ICM and your stack here, I would assume.
Yeah. I'm with you. There's maybe some room for us to consider if like a 2.5 big blind raise would overperform and we could do that instead of open jamming. But queen six also just looks like a perfectly fine hand class to open jam to me. We like occasionally have pretty good equity when called and we clear out some hands that dominate us as well.
Yeah, you see a lot of the queen six off, queen five off, king six off, king five off. These are kinda magic combos when it comes to jamming in some spots like this because, as you said, like, first of all, like, I don't know in this ICM scenario specifically, but in a lot of spots, you're gonna get called by some worse hands. Your opponent's like, let's say you have king six off and you jam. Your opponent is calling like queen jack suited, queen 10 suited, jack 10 suited, some stuff like this. At the same time, he's folding like king 7 off, king 8 off. Um, so some of these combos, they become like very efficient in that way where you get called by some worse hands and you fold out some better hands. Not sure if that's the case with this one, but I would be very happy just jamming queen 6 here regardless.
Yep, makes sense. Looks like Attenborough found some chips. Now opening under the gun with ace jack offsuit, 42 big blinds. Effective. Just looking around. Oh yeah, Sue with the short stack now. Gonna be putting in his last 5 big blinds with pocket eights here. Is there any decision for you?
Not the way the stacks are distributed right as of now. If it was like Suki opening under the gun here of like a smaller stack, more ICM pressure, and a tighter player as well, I would probably just fold pocket eights here. But here, when there's like a big stack opening, an active big stack as well, I think pocket eights is just like too good to pass on for five bigs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a like, just an important thing to remember in these spots. Okay, you have 5 bigs and you feel like you need to get all in at some point, but it's really important to keep in mind who has opened the pot in a spot like this. Did the guy opening, is his range like, 20% or is it like 8%, you know? Like, you have to yeah, have
Yeah.
to take that into account.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and, it's so common for players on a short stack at a final table to see a hand this good, like, pocket eights is quite premium for 5 big blinds, and just, like, put the blinders on and put those chips in no matter what happens, no matter who opened, what position, whatever, and it can be so costly to miss on laddering spots when you're playing 5 big blinds, because like, the flip side of this is Sue's just I mean, he's about to be out, but generally speaking, he's so unlikely to win the tournament off of 5 big blinds, right? So if he can just, like, manage to cobble together 2 ladders somehow when there's a few other stacks at the table that are sub 20 big blinds, it would be so massive for his EV.
He's taking it really well. What a run he had at this table, Jesus. Coming in as chip leader and busting in ninth place, that's a rough go. He's handling it really well, I think.
You're just imagining yourself having to deal with the same thing because you 2 were
Oh,
tied
yeah.
at the start of the day.
Uh,
Imagine the
yeah, it
swing.
could easily have been me. I mean, Jesus, he just got cooler, fucking 4 hands, and now he's out. I don't know.
Yeah, it's brutal. Alright, with Sue going down in ninth place, now eight-handed, folds to Dobrich, who still has the chip lead by a small margin. He opens 9-7 suited in the cutoff, and Farnes defends the big. You ever doing something different as either player?
Nope. Seems good.
Yeah, just kind of scanning that Farnes Now that Suki won that hand to eliminate Sue, Barnes is the shortest stack in the field. He's on 14 bigs, and the next shortest has 21. And I feel like that kind of stuff, it plays into these decisions. You have to pay attention to how short you are compared to it's not just enough to say, "Oh, I'm the shortest stack." It's like, "Well, how short am I compared to everyone?" If Barnes would to double, there's quite upside. He'd be middle of the pack. Very reasonable chance at fighting for the tournament.
Yep. Yeah, this is a very interesting hand, I think, and a very surprising one. I think when this hand happened, everyone was kind of just looking at each other, just like, okay, what happened here? I remember this.
So
It's a wild
far,
one.
just, check, min bet, call, nothing too unusual on the flop. But now with
Yep.
just over pot behind, I guess we're expecting fireworks. That was
Look at this.
quick. Was that
How quick is that call?
Yeah, was that edited or was it actually a snap call
He
here
just
with Jack
snapped him
5 of
off.
hearts?
The way I remember it, he just snapped him off. Just which is why people were like, kind of like, okay, what? Like,
Yeah, when you
ugh.
when you snap and you're expecting to turn over your 9-7 against like a straight or Jack 10 or something, right? He's just got the Jack 5 of hearts.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a
We're playing for 10 million, and it took less than a second to call it off. I mean, the guy just decided. The guy just like, "Okay, I mean, good luck."
yeah, huge call obviously and like I was just alluding to, I mean, big opportunity when he's right. He holds here and now he's 4th in chips? No, like looks like 6th in chips, but still extremely close between all the middle players. He's
Yeah.
only 14
I
million
think that
shy
was,
of Dobrich.
I think that was Farns just having seen Dobrich do a lot of aggressive actions, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm not gonna let this guy bluff me. Just yeah, I'm not."
All right, still 8 left, and now Suki, the shortest stack on 20 bigs. He's opening ace queen suited from under the gun. Duix in the hijack with ace deuce suited. I know we've talked about Suki as maybe someone who's on the tight side, but is this just stepping a little too far out of line?
I think so. I would just fold the ace deuce suited here. Like, I don't know, like, okay, Suki is playing kinda tight, and you might expect him to overfold, sure, but at the same time, he might have already overfolded to begin with.
Mm.
So he's just gonna have a stronger range than the solver for opening here, potentially, right? So trying to tribute him off strong range, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I would be hesitant, I think, especially with Dueck's stack. If Dueck has like 120 million here and he can afford to do some stuff, maybe.
Yeah.
But here, it's not like he can put that much pressure post flop. There's serious risk premium on him as well, even though he covers him. He doesn't cover by that much.
Yeah, it's actually a really hard stack distribution to play. I mean, a lot of times we don't spend too much time looking at sims where everyone has the same chip stack, but this final table right now, like you're chip leading with 43 bigs and the shortest stack has 22 bigs. So there's no room really for anyone to breathe.
Yeah, for sure.
So Suki does call the 3 bet. That feels pretty accurate to me. Quite a strong hand ahead of all the bluffs, but not good enough to want to be all in. And now on this flop, just kind of have to continue against such a small C bet. I mean, we've got 2 overs and a backdoor nut flush draw.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to continue in some way, shape, or form for sure. Both pre-flop and the flop. Um, and I do like just calling and calling. I would play the same as Suki so far.
So Duick slows down on the jack of clubs. It feels like with total air, maybe we can continue bluffing. And Suki just snap checks the river. This one surprises me a bit. I mean, how can we get here unpaired? It's quite hard for Suki to have missed this board.
It is for sure. Maybe you have like ace 10 of hearts or diamonds, maybe that you get here with, but otherwise you're at the bottom of your range. Question is if you still need to bluff this or if you get to bluff this. I mean, the king is a really good card for Dueck, right? He has king queen off, you don't. He has ace king off, you don't. Some suited stuff that he has that you don't as well, like king 10 suited, maybe you don't have, king 9 suited, maybe he has and you don't. So the king are
Sure.
obviously like really good card for Dueck. Maybe it's just one of those where, yeah, you're at the bottom of your range, but the card is so good for Dueck that, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, uh, as the way that the hand played out, like, credit to Dueck for just finding a bluff, and in that spot, it's hard to have totally missed that board, but because he was light pre-flop, he found a great bluff opportunity on the river. He ends up 3rd in chips as a result. I mean, this maybe another instance of people proceeding cautiously against him and then his aggression paying off.
Yeah, he was not afraid. He was ready to pull the trigger. Really impressive play from Dueck, I think.
So to your first point, Espen, about pre-flop play, Suki's supposed to open 15% of hands here, king 9 suited, king jack offsuit, ace 4 suited. I mean, our impression from this side seems to be that he probably just open folds these hands, so that probably indicates that the Duick is getting a little out of line. There's not gonna be a lot of those weaker hands to push around.
Yeah, I would think at least a few of these combos will go into the muck. I don't think he's gonna go like super. I don't think he's like giga nit and gonna fold just ace jack off, king queen off. But I
Yeah,
do think he might just fold king jack off, ace 10 off, ace 3 suited, pocket sixes, like these very bottom ones, you know? He might fold those. And yeah, can we have a look at the hijack and see what he's supposed to be three betting here versus this range?
for sure.
All right, so this is hijack three betting range versus under the gun here versus the loser range. And
Yeah,
if the range is already going to be tighter, you hear that ace four suited mostly folding, right? Ace five suited is the only one we're picking from down in the suited aces department, the wheel aces. Ace two suited just like super far. I mean, in EV, it's not super far off. Um, but yeah, if you just add all of these, which if you're using ace two suited, you are.
yeah.
I mean, then you're just using every suited ace, presumably. Um, you are going to be quite heavily over bluffing in the end. Each combo might not have that much of an EV difference, but if you just add all of them, your strategy is going to be uh, a bit out of whack, you know?
Yeah, definitely. And, I am curious how many folds we're anticipating. Yeah, so this could be problematic, I think. Looking at the loose version of the range, folding 42% of the time to a size that's smaller than what Duick used as well, right? So this is only 4 big blinds. It folds back to Suki. He's supposed to fold, ace queen off sometimes. All of these offsuit broadways, we're not sure if all these offsuit broadways are even opening in the first place. So to say the EV of the bluff is close, I think it's a little misleading. We might just be losing some money up front with this play and hoping to make it back post flop.
Yeah, the good thing about Tributing is that I don't think Suki will play as many 4-bet jams as this sim is doing. This sim is like mixing 4-bet jams with like sevens, eights, nines, okay, tens, maybe he would. Ace jack suited, ace five suited, ace four suited, king jack suited, a bunch of these. Yeah, I think that might not happen in game, which is good for us. Um, but still, I don't think that's enough to make up for it, probably.
Well, Espen, I was wrong because we set up the custom sim. We used some ranges that we thought were a little more realistic for these two players, set up all the bet sizes as they should have been, and Suki just has a range check on the river. So I think the idea that this king is just too bad for us from under the gun was exactly correct. I mean, our overall range um, is doing okay, but we just don't have the top of the range as far as I can tell.
Yeah, can we click the ranges tab real quick and just look at, I mean, do we have, let's look at top pair. Yeah, we have 0.1% of our range is top pair. So nothing. And he has 26% top pair on the river.
Yeah.
uh, which is kind of insane, right? I mean, that's a big, big chunk of his range right there.
Yeah, we're doing our best to strengthen the range by trapping all of these sets, but this also means that we can't bluff with a hand like ace queen, which like it feels really bad for this hand, but I guess the EV of going all in just isn't going to be that good because we would rather like there's an outside chance this hand shows down and chops or wins even potentially because of the checking range, right? So at least by putting everything into a check, there's some chance that we could show down the winner.
I think we can win a decent bit, right? Like, I mean, of course, it's a really good river for him, so he gets to bluff it a lot as well. But he's gonna show down for sure some other ace highs that we beat sometimes.
Yeah,
Let's have a look.
let's see what Dueck's range looks like when we check. He had ace deuce, and it's clearly a jam on the end, although ace deuce of diamonds, for whatever reason, is break even. But there's
Yeah.
all these other ace highs, right? I mean, there's other ace highs in this range, including ace queen offsuit that are checking and showing down. So ace queen could at least chop, and it could sometimes win.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think this makes a lot of sense. I think it's in spots like this, it's kind of easy to go into the trap that I'm at the bottom of my range. I'm all in. Uh,
That's exactly where I went.
Yeah, and it's very intuitive to do that, right? I've done that multiple times myself where you just feel like you have to bluff because you're at the bottom of your range. And then you look in the solver after and you realize you didn't have to bluff because you're just checking range because the turn or river or whatever was so good for your opponent. That's exactly what happened here, right? The river is just like so good for Duek here that we're just not not very interested in putting money in.
Well, perhaps Suki's patience has paid off because now on 8 big blinds on the button, he gets dealt aces. Looks like he's gonna get called by Dobrich in the big blind. Do you think we're too short to play min raises, or could we find another option here?
Personally, I don't go all in with aces on final tables unless I'm at like 5 bigs or something. If I
Reaction.
yeah, I don't like jamming aces no matter what. I always try to, like, either click it or min raise if I'm opening, like, if with 8 bigs here, I would min raise for sure. Um I just think it's, because that allows you to bluff some hands as well if you min raise aces, you get to some of the hands that are just too weak to jam. Let's say that your jamming range is like king 9 off here, then you get to min raise king 8 off and stuff like that, you know? You get to just widen your range a bit if you include some of these hands into a min raising range. So I would personally min raise aces here. I don't think you induce a lot of hands. I think it's like kind of a narrow range that you're inducing here, but it's
Mhm.
definitely like aces, kings, queens, maybe jacks. I don't know. Ace king suited, ace queen suited. Like the best suited aces and the best pairs are usually the ones you use, and then you just jam with like even like I think you would induce ace queen suited before you induce ace king offsuit.
Right.
Like I would jam ace king offsuit, and I would induce ace queen suited.
Yeah.
Wow, what a crazy run out this is.
Yeah, and I suppose jamming ace king, even a hand like aces, you get called by a number of worse hands that you don't even interfere with because of how short you are. So it does get kind of close. It's not like you need your opponent to have an ace in their hand to get called for 8 big blinds, but you kinda want them to have an ace. So it's a little easier when you have ace king offsuit than it is when you have 2 aces.
Painful exit here after being very patient. Suki gets it in with aces and oh, oh well. GG's.
GG. So I see 2 aces in the big blind for Eames, a 6,000,000 open at 2.5 from Dushak. He opened from early position. This is the low jack now that we're seven-handed. Are we too short to 3-bet here? I mean, it feels like the same discussion with aces that we just had about, opening off of 8 big blinds. We can find a 3-bet now.
I would three bet for sure. I love these spots in ICM, like going for small three bets with like short stacks and going for opens even though you only have 8 bigs. if you have pocket aces, usually the strategy is uh, to make small three bets or small opens, and yeah, no matter how shallow you are, I would for sure just like the open was the six bigs, which is a big open in the first place, but still, I would just make it well, not six bigs, it was 6 million. Sorry, I would still just make it like 16 million or
Right.
15 and a half or whatever, you know. Like you can make it small because you're so polar. Like the hands that you're doing it with are so strong that your opponent can't really do much about it. It's not like he can start flatting you a bunch or playing back at you a bunch. Like you're so polar that you don't really need to go big anyways.
And it's funny because now Eames is doing exactly what you said, but in what's a less intuitive spot for me. Like now we're small check raising on 10-9-4 two-tone, and we have aces with no diamond. There's a lot of scary prospects on future streets. I might be tempted to just be all in when I check raise here, or just use some bigger size.
Yeah, I agree. Um, Especially without the ace of diamonds, I guess. Maybe it's one of those where you just jam if you don't have the ace of diamonds and you go for like an induce if you have aces with ace of diamonds. I don't know. Um, but yeah, big cooler, of course, didn't really matter what they did. The money was always going to go in in some fashion. Um,
And because of how tight stacks were, another pretty huge turning point for whoever wins this hand. You've got 100 million chips in the pot, and that's going to be good for what? Number two in chips, regardless of who wins it?
yeah, number one or number two. Let's see. I don't even remember who wins this and a few more outs.
Because neither
It's for
neither of them wins the tournament, huh?
that I remember, yeah. None of them wins the tournament. Um, None of them played heads up, that I remember. Is he cold? Is he cold for Eames?
Yeah, it goes his way. He's now number two, and Dushek on the short stack.
Tuzak takes it well, smiles, shrugs it off.
Well, it looks like Dushek has a decision under the gun. He's gonna have to post the big blind ante next hand. Oh, he was very much all in with this 7-6 suited, but it looks like he has something important to take care of before he makes that play. Not an angle, guys, I promise. I'm actually all in.
Uh, hmm.
So I see you sizing
Okay.
things up with fours here. I mean, you're in early position, which makes this awkward. What do you want to do in this spot just in general? Like how do you think this spot plays when you're facing a four big blind all in?
I would like to see myself fold. I'm very happy that I'm folding. Uh, I would assume that you play a range of call and a range of click, and that's it. I would assume, but I'm not sure.
Mhm.
Um, Pocket Force just seems like I'm kind of in the middle of the pack now. Attenborough covers, Eames covers. Um, yeah, V-bipping Force there would be, yeah, too loose, I think.
Yeah, I definitely think fours is too loose. I do find these spots interesting though. Like you see in high stakes tournaments, especially, it's so common to run into spots with like the odd short stack because people are leaving chips behind so often. So you get into all these funky scenarios where like someone's over there with two big blinds or someone's all in for three big blinds, and you want to have some sort of plan for these. So that's why I ask. Like, it makes sense to me to click a lot, and there's not that much benefit to like jamming. Let's say with Duex stack and Ace King, I like that he just went to 20 million instead of jamming, which I think a lot of players would do.
Yeah, I think even 20 might be a bit big. Maybe just, yeah, kind of click it to like, what would that be? I mean, I guess it would still be like 17 or whatever, so it's
Yeah,
not that big.
17, 18 minimum.
Yeah. Okay. Six outs.
Dude,
Dudek having the time of his life.
yeah.
GG's. GG's.
All right, now we've got Attenborough, chip lead at this point. We've definitely fast forwarded a little bit. He's min raising the button into Duick's big blind. Looks like Duick was thinking about some stuff. Maybe spinning some three bet, you think? Is it a candidate ace nine offsuit?
Would think that it's probably not. You're gonna be insanely polar here. I don't think the ace nine is the one. I think it's gonna be like the ace four, ace three, like the low ones that unblock a lot of the raise folds.
Mhm.
Like ace nine is kind of just like, first of all, you dominate a lot of the opens of Attenborough. You dominate like king nine off, queen nine off, 10 9 off, like a lot of these things. Even a hand like 7 9 off, which is gonna open, right? You dominate so much of his range. You don't really want to fold them out. So yeah, I think ace nine just very happy calling.
Now getting kind of interesting. So the flop went check check. Attenborough with just third pair on the flop seems totally fine to play some check behinds. He turns two pair. I like that Dewitt keeps checking. I don't see much point in trying to bluff with ace nine against a flop check back, but now we're certainly facing a bet. Looks like 2/3 pot or so. How do you see the spot if you're playing as Dueck?
Oh, you kind of have the nut bluff hand on the turn. You don't have a heart, which kind of sucks. But like if you had like ace nine with ace of hearts, that's the nut bluff hand. I think. I don't know like how. Wow, here it comes. Um,
Yeah.
like obviously you're blocking all the straights and you have open ender. You're drawing to the nuts on the top side at least. Um, yeah, I mean I don't know. It's kind of a nice hand to bluff. Like when your opponent checks back. I don't know. Like, what do you think about checking back this flop at all? I mean, you have all the ace kings. I guess your opponent doesn't flat ace king ever. Even with this ICM, I would think that ace king is just pure three betting. Tens,
I
jacks, queens, also just pure three betting, don't you think?
I personally don't mind. Wow, Dueck just gets there. I mean, I obviously wish we could have seen what happens on a blank river because I don't think it's easy for either side. Um, My thought though as Attenborough on the flop is I'm okay playing kind of a polar strategy when I know that as the button I'm opening super wide. Um, and then as the big blind, Dueck's going to be flatting a lot of strong hands. So there's like less of let's say an imbalance than there might normally be, you know? Like he's gonna hit Queen Jack 10 pretty well. Um, and I'm gonna have, yes, I'm gonna have the nuts like Ace King, but I'm also gonna have so much trash. So I don't mind playing more checks, just in general when that's the dynamic.
I've never seen this hand before, and this is the first big blunder I think we've seen Dueck make. He went all in on the river, which makes absolutely 0 sense to me. First of all, like, I think he has, like, way less ace-X than Attenborough. Attenborough is much more likely to have, like, ace-jack, ace-10, ace-X of hearts, like, so many more ace-X for Attenborough. And also he has the 9, so he's blocking exactly what he wants to get called by if he goes all in. Like, if you go all in here, you're kinda hoping to get called by a 9, right? And you're blocking and with a 9, like, ace-9 must be like, first, I just wouldn't play any all-ins here at all.
Yeah,
I just think it doesn't really make any sense at all, especially with ICM. But especially with this hand, like ace nine must be the worst ace out of all of them if you do want to play all in. This is maybe the first big blunder we've seen from Dweck. Um, but yeah,
totally agree. All right, so looking at the post flop sim for this spot, looks like I was wrong about playing checks, or at least checking is not a frequent outcome. Do you have any thoughts about why this might be, Espen?
no, I mean you just have like a very big advantage at the top end of the range. You have all the ace king, he has none. You have all the queens, jacks, tens. I do think that the big blind had some pocket tens here, but not queens and jacks, if I remember correctly. So, I mean, you just have like a big advantage in the nuts, and you are covered. So, you're covered, like the button is chip leading. So, as the big blind being covered and not having any of the strongest hands, you don't really get to be too aggressive versus bets. To yeah, you can just kind of dictate the action quite easily by just range betting from the button here, I think. And
Yeah,
pushy Reeve, and you can bluff a lot on later streets, and there's just no bad outcome from betting here, but
sure. Yeah, I mean, fortunately, even though checking happens just a couple percent of the time, we can see that the hand Adrian had does check behind at least a fraction. And with the way the new engine is working in GTO Wizard, as I understand it, the future streets are still going to be reasonably accurate in these rare lines, the ghost lines, I guess that they're calling them. I don't know if this qualifies as a ghost line. But the engine is now exploring ghost lines more efficiently, so the strategies that we see later in the hand are meant to be more accurate, and you can see, like, we're not dealing with tiny slivers of low frequency combos anymore, even though we went down that 2% line. We're actually seeing a pretty well built out strategy, which I think is sweet. So we can just take a look at how to play the hand from the turn regardless.
yep.
So first interesting thing once we get to the turn as played, is that Attenborough's bet with 10-7 suited is just pretty thin for this size. Is that surprising to you?
It's a bit surprising to me, actually, yeah. I would think that you just kind of for the same reasons as on the flop, you get to bet a lot. Once you've checked the flop, like now, it's still not like we're gonna get check raised that much, although we're gonna get check raised more, of course, because we're gonna be way more capped because we don't really have ace, king, queens, jacks in our check back range on the flop. So yeah, we can see there is a decent amount of check raising here, right? Uh,
Yeah, we set the size to the one that Duick used in game, and I mean it's getting used 5.6%. It's more than nothing. But there's also just as I kind of scan through, like there's some pretty strong hands even in the two pair category that are just check calling the turn. So maybe a little bit of that risk avoidance happening from both players where you've just, you know, you've got better hands, and you're not necessarily always fast playing them, but this range even has king nine in it, and it's sometimes check calling the turn and oftentimes check raising. So 10-7 in position is no guarantee to be the best hand, even if it just goes check bet call.
yeah, a couple of interesting ones here as well. Like you see, there is some hands that wants to jam, and in this jamming range, I see that we actually have a bunch of 9-7 offsuit, which is
Yeah.
I get it with 9-8 offsuit sometimes, like sure that one makes a lot of sense, but finding the bluff jam here with 9-7, that's yeah, that that's a hand.
Sick blockers.
Yeah, yes.
So I am noticing that ace nine is relatively absent from this check raising range, and part of that is because I was wrong to make the first assumption that ace nine shouldn't just lead and bluff the turn. It seems like a totally fine hand class to lead and bluff the turn. This seems to me like just a misassessment of like how tight people are going to be playing under the risk premium. I suppose if we do lead, we can just generate enough folds from better hands. So even though that hand's absent, we can still see the other check raising type hands. It's not totally different from what ends up getting used, but maybe now we're looking at, pair plus ace, ace plus flush draw, right? These kinds of hands instead of the ace nine.
The ace jack of hearts is an interesting one. Like, can I have a look at the button range versus the check raise here? Like the ace jack of hearts, do we just like get some folds from like weak queens? Yeah. So it's kind of like a mega master. We just get folds from um yeah, a bunch of weak queens. Even queen eight. Queen eight is folding to the check raise on a turn here, which
Yeah.
yeah, bit surprising, I guess. Gut shot, talk pair, flop one, check check.
So you were right about the river strategy, Espen, and this might be, one of the bigger blunders that we've seen. We just check range on the river when the king comes. It's actually kind of interesting. I was looking at the range breakdown. Duick has 55% straights, but it's almost always a nine. Like we rarely have an ace, right? And if we look at range versus range, the button has 45% straights, so fewer straights, but way more of them are the ace high straight. So I have to think that's why we're now just checking it over with everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did not expect range check to be honest, but I definitely it definitely felt like all in was not going to be on the table. I did expect some block sizing to be a thing for Duek, but as we can see, it's just not really.
Hard to see the ace nine offsuit because it's not in this node, but switching to dollar view just so you can get the full appreciation of how costly this mistake is. If we count through all 7 digits of there, this looks like, what is that, $160,000 difference between checking and going all in?
Quite a lot of money. Quite a lot of money. Yeah. Blocking wouldn't be that bad. Blocking wouldn't be a disaster, but going all in, even though it says plus a big amount, you're winning a big amount. The difference between all in and check is, of course, also quite big. So yeah.
Next spot here, we've got Eames opening the button with 9-8 suited, Barnes in the small blind with about 13 blinds, and you're in the big blind with 40. Looks like Farnes is giving this one some pause. What do we think about deuces here as the shortest stack?
It's an interesting one for sure. It's seen a call. I would think it's just gonna be an all in as the shortest stack here. I would not play any calls at all, I think. I would not play a calling range, and I think deuces, I would just be all in here. Any pair seems good enough. Like, the risk premium on you is not even that big, like, you're the shortest stack, and yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and we end up 3 ways to the flop as a result because you get to overcall the 9-7. I have to imagine if if it wasn't a short stack in the small blind, you might not be thrilled to overcall the 9-7, but I think it's okay. Wow, what a find. I think it's okay in this setup, like being in position against a small blind.
Yeah, I think since I cover both players here, I defend the 9-7 off. If I was, like, covered by the button opener, for example, I think I would just, fold the 9-7.
Yeah.
I think the only reason I found the call there was because, I do cover. It matters quite a bit in terms of how much pressure he can put on us post-flop and how much pressure we can put when we cover and so on. Obviously, there was no room to put pressure for me or Eames in this half because Franz just went all in straight on the flop.
Yeah,
Yeah.
finds himself in much worse scenario than the flip that would have been pre-flop or just getting through the jam. I mean, Eames probably folds even though it's only 12 bigs. And yeah, this is
I think, yeah.
the stop and go runs him into a draw that's a huge favorite.
Yeah, 61% chance to win and you don't have a hand yet. That's quite rare.
Flipping on the turn.
Quite rare. Flipping on the turn even, that's 22 outs. I don't remember this hand either. I don't remember how it goes. Kinda crazy how much of this tournament is a blur for me. Wow,
What a way to go.
yeah, sick. It's kinda interesting how much of this tournament is a blur to me in terms of, yeah, it's just I think the moment of playing this final table is just so intense that a lot of it just yeah, my
Yeah.
brain just didn't collect and save all the information. I don't know.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I mean, all the hands, maybe the hands that you're involved in specifically are gonna be embedded further, right? But like your brain's probably looking for every chance to rest possible. So whenever you're out of the hand, it's just like, oh, thank God, I don't need to think anymore.
Makes sense.
Back to the action 5-handed. We've now got Attenborough open limping the button. He's got 35 bigs, Dobrich 17 in the small, Dewitt covering. What do you think of this from Attenborough? Did
In
Dewitt
general,
just
you
so sorry to interrupt, but Dewitt just checked the big blind with ace king of
this
diamonds.
this is one of those hands where you just think there must be something wrong with the graphics. Like, what is going on here? This is an absurd hand of poker. I don't know how you would ever consider checking here with ace king suited even. I don't know. I don't get it. In general, you're not gonna see much limping in ICM. On final tables especially, you won't see much limping at all. There are some really strong players that do this just for pure exploitative reasons. They just think it works better. Like I know Mikita, for example, like right now he's playing a bunch of limps in spots where most people would never. And he's obviously a very strong, accomplished, smart player. So he has his reasons for doing it. So I think it's important to just not be like one of those guys that like, oh, the solver never limps in ICM, so you should never limp in ICM. Like actually think about like what happens when you limp. People finding the ISO bluffs they're supposed to, for example. If not, then yeah, maybe it's not the worst idea, you know? Um, wow, this
This
is a
this
strange hand
hand,
of poker.
I have to think this hand's gonna show down, so we can judge by the reactions of the table to see whether it actually played out as described, but I'm a little bit baffled by this one. I mean, Attenborough might think that he can go for value. It's hard for Duick to have hit a king.
For sure. I would go for value. I would just go like 13 million, 13 to 15, something like this.
Yeah, looks like he did. He gets
And
snapped.
Jaeger.
Watching Dobrich for a reaction. He's giving away nothing. I was trying to get a read off of Dobrich, but I guess Attenborough's giving away that, yeah, this was a weird one. Okay, yeah, there's the Eames is like, okay, that was an interesting played hand. Now back with Dobrich in the hijack. He's opening sixes. He's now the shortest stack, although he's not short. He's got 23 blinds. Eames, quick fold on the button with 8-7 suited. Seems like a wise choice with covering stacks behind and, well, just playing a final table in general. Oh, I feel like I have some memory of this one. This is a big pot, isn't it, Espen?
I have a lot of memories about this one because in my head at the moment, I felt like this was going to be a theory jam. But me and Dobrich had been battling a lot, even though it doesn't look like this in this replayer. And I felt like he was ready to pop. I felt like he's so ready now. So if he just has a suited ace or a suited Broadway, he's going to be all in. So I decided to go for an exploit 3-bet call instead of jam. And it kind of backfired because in jam 6 is a hand which he would surely fold if I just went all in. It backfired, and we ended up flipping for chip lead pot here. A massive, massive one. Uh, and yeah, I I just want to confirm that he has what I think, and I will make the call. Um, I obviously uh lockboxed and won the flip, but I do think my logic was okay for this. That it's actually um yeah, that is actually a fair exploit since I had such a read that he was ready to go. Um, yeah, I have never looked at a sim for this hand actually, so it's gonna be interesting for me to see after as well how this actually looks pre-flop. But I'm gonna assume that my hand just wants to go all in and not induce, and I'm gonna be inducing like ace queen suited, but go all in with ace queen off, ace king off, um,
It's
maybe
kind of an
ace queen off
interesting
if I
one.
induce.
It's an interesting one to me because it's quite, stacks are quite condensed still, even though you do have a bit of separation here. And Dobrich is not short. Like he's got 23 blinds to start the hand. Attenborough behind with over 30. It wouldn't shock me to just play this hand as a call and like play a lot of calls in general from the small blind, but that also probably depends on Dobrich playing pretty snug in his opening range. I like your idea though. If he's more weighted towards those suited ace bluffs or like suited Broadway bluffs even, then this hand just ends up being in great shape.
He was not playing snug. He was VPing a lot and playing quite out of line, I must say. So yeah, I actually think my exploit here is fine. We'll see if it even is an exploit. I'm not confident, and I haven't looked at the sim, but that was my idea in game, anyways.
Let's have a look. All right, well, let's look at starting with Dobrich's opening range. I mean, sixes is one of the lowest pairs. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a bad jam, but noteworthy that this is kind of our bottom pair open, and he should have all those suited aces and all the suited broadways that you're hoping to capture a 4-bet bluff from. Let's take a look at Espen in the small blind here. Anything from this that surprises you?
Not really. I'm a bit surprised that we're not jamming pocket tens and pocket nines. I would think those are kind of natural jams here. I'm a bit surprised that ace queen off is actually mixing in the sim. It's just choose your own adventure. Basically, you can go all in, you can
Yeah.
induce, or you can even flat call, which is a bit surprising to me. I was thinking that the solver just say all in, and I thought that I was making an exploit by inducing. So I think that if the solver even wants to induce this much, then I think inducing in game was going to be quite a lot better because I really felt like he was ready to pop. We can have a look at his range though, like how he's meant to respond to my three bets. And pocket sixes is in there. Like he's not even like exploding. It's not like he's tilt jamming sixes. It's actually a perfectly fine jam. As
Yeah, but there is like, I mean, there's you can somewhat see why Ace Queen is willing to induce if all these suited broadways that we're ahead of are part of the four bet jamming range. And there's some of those suited aces you mentioned, but this honestly looks fairly controlled in terms of mixing calls. And if he's playing the way you described it, like is he really going to call sixes, 80% of the time or not jam ace five suited pure? It sounds like we're expecting more of those hands.
yes, I also went for a bigger three bet size than what the solver did here, which is going to force him to play more jams and less calls, basically. Or not necessarily more jams, but less calls for sure when I increased my three bet sizing. I do think that a lot of the suited aces that here are just folding or ace five suited just calling. I think in game this was never gonna happen, honestly. I think like the suited wheel aces, they were going in. I'm fairly confident the way he was playing and the dynamics and everything. So yeah, I'm really happy about this hand, honestly.
Yeah, you can see here it's a marginally winning call already in the solution. So I think with your assumptions, it's just a really good play.
It's not even that marginal though, right? I mean, 0.19. Can we click the dollar thing again? Oh. Can you see how many dollars I'm making?
That's
Oh,
that's only that's only for post flop play. Yeah, the pre-flop solutions don't have
right.
the we're not going to see how many millions you made, but I think it's fair to say 10 million. I think this was a $10 million call.
I agree.